So let's take a look at notes today. Today we're going to look at a new type of factoring that realistically, as long as you can factor out a GCF like we did in class yesterday, you're going to be good to go with factoring by grouping. It just requires factoring out a GCF twice. Okay, so we're going to be looking at factoring by grouping. Factoring by grouping is something that we do when we look at a polynomial that has 4 terms. Right? Remember, terms are how many pieces are being added and subtracted. So today we're going to be looking at things specifically with 4 terms. So maybe let's look at the following problem. 21x to the third plus 12x squared plus 14x plus 8. Okay, this has 4 terms, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to be able to factor this by grouping. When we have 4 terms and we decide to factor by grouping, our first step, okay, step 1, is that we are going to split it in half. It has 4 terms and half of 4 is 2, so we're going to chop this in half into 2 terms on the left and 2 terms on the right. Now we want to make sure when we split it in half, we're keeping this addition sign with the number, right? Because this addition sign is telling us if that's positive or negative. So now we're going to have 21x to the third plus 12x squared and positive 14x, but I don't need to write down the positive, right? Plus 8. So now I sort of have 2 separate problems that I've split in half. That's step 1. We should all be able to do that. Step 2 is going to be to factor out the GCF of each of these. So I left a little bit of space here on purpose, but step 2 is that we're going to factor out the GCF of each of these. So we're going to pretend that we have 2 separate problems and that it was yesterday in class and I gave you these 2 terms and I said factor out a GCF. Okay, so you would decide what goes into 21 that will also go into 12, which is a 3. They both have the variable. So we're going to take this smaller exponent, which is x squared. So 21 divided by 3 is 7. Subtract the exponents, we'll get a 7x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And those x squareds cancel out. I have the full GCF, so I get 3x squared, and then in parentheses, 7x plus 4. We're going to do the exact same thing over here to these 2 terms. Again, pretend that it's a completely different problem. Okay, we're going to decide what goes into 14 that will also go into 8. Okay, so 14 and 8, we can divide out a 2. They do not both have the variable, so no x can come out. 14 divided by 2 is 7. X is still left over. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I have out the GCF. Okay, so that 2 goes in front. So now that I factored out a GCF of each side, right now I'm here. I'm just rewriting what I had above. You don't need to do that. I'm just going to move my paper up. Okay, and in this step, it's really important that we notice that 7x plus 4 is happening in both situations. Okay, we need those to be matching binomials. That's not a coincidence. That's part of factoring by grouping. If you don't see that these are matching binomials, there's one of two options that could happen. Either you made a mistake or I gave you a problem that's not factorable by grouping, which is possible, but I've checked everything for today, so you should be good to go today. Okay, so if those aren't matching, always go back and make sure you actually got the GCF. Make sure there's maybe nothing else that you could divide by. Okay. Once you have those matching, you know you have the GCF out. Step 3 is that we are going to rewrite this as two binomials. Okay, we need to rewrite this as two binomials. Remember, a binomial is something with two terms. So we want two sets of parentheses where inside each set of parentheses we have two terms. Okay, and to make this happen, what we're going to do is we're going to take the piece out here, the GCFs. Those two GCFs, we're not going to actually add them because they're not like terms. We're just going to sort of set them side by side. Okay, so in one set of parentheses, we're going to put the first GCF. Okay, this is a positive 2. So I'm going to put a positive 2 in there next to it, right? It now reads as 3x squared plus 2, but that's okay. And then I'm going to take this binomial that we had in common, and I'm going to write it one time. And so I now have 3x squared plus 2 times 7x plus 4. And this is my final answer. Now, just like yesterday, hopefully you're looking at this and saying, oh, wow, that kind of looks familiar. Right? Last trimester, we would take this and we would distribute the 3x squared. So we'd say 3x squared times 7x and 3x squared times 4, which is what's happening up here. Right? We would take 2 and distribute it to both, which is what's happening here. And if we multiplied all 4 pieces out, it would take us back to our original problem. Right? Factoring is our multiplication backwards, in reverse. So let's take a look at 2 more problems that involve the same process, just so we sort of see what it looks like without having the steps in between. Okay, so let's take a look at 2x to the third power plus 8x squared plus 3x plus 12. Okay, so if we wanted to factor this by grouping, the first thing that we do is split it in half. You can choose to rewrite these on sort of separate sides of your paper. Most of my students are perfectly fine just drawing that line and working on one side at a time. Okay, so let's look over here at the left-hand side. We're going to decide what we can divide into 2 that we can also divide into 8. So this has a GCF of 2x squared, right? They both have the x. The smaller exponent is 2. So when I divide that out, that leaves me with an x plus 4, right? 8 divided by 2 is 4. I subtract the exponents. Those cancel out. I'll put my GCF in front of 2x squared. Okay, then I'm going to do my right-hand side. So what goes into 3? That also goes into 12. We'll pull out a 3. They don't both have the x, so I can't pull that out. 3 divided by 3 is 1. You can choose to write down the 1. If you wrote down the 1, you probably would have wrote down the 1 over here. 12 divided by 3 is 4. We have matching binomials. Those both say x plus 4, which is perfect. That's what we want to happen. So we'll take 2x squared plus 3, right? My 2x squared is my GCF, my other GCF, and it's a positive 3, so I'm putting plus 3. And then in my other binomial, I'm putting what was repeated. And so I'm going to write that x plus 4 once. My final answer is 2x squared plus 3 and x plus 4. Okay, let's look at one more. Four n to the third power plus 3n squared plus 4n plus 3. Okay, so again, we're going to split this in half. If we look at the left-hand side, what goes into 4, that also goes into 3. We can only think of 1. You can choose to write the 1 down or not. They do both have the variable. The larger or the smaller exponent is 2. So when we divide that out, we'll have a 4n plus 3 and then n squared. Sorry, the air conditioning turned on, or the heat, whatever is happening in my room is blowing my paper. Okay, then we're going to look at the right-hand side over here. Okay, what goes into 4? That also goes into 3. We can only pick 1 there. They don't both have the variable, so we can't pull it in. So here we have to write down the 1. We don't have a choice because we have to have a GCF. And remember, if we can't find anything else, our GCF is 1. So I told you it'd kind of come up and be important later, so here's where it's important. So we'll just write this as a 1 and then the 4n plus 3. Our 4n plus 3 is matching, which is perfect. That's what we want to happen. So we'll take our GCFs and put those together, and n squared plus 1. And then our common one, which is 4n plus 3. So here's what I need you to be doing for the rest of class. Okay, you are going to get out your device. Freshmen, we should all have our own device. I can pretty much guarantee I know that some of you do not. So if you do not have your device or it's not charged, because there's a sub, I'm going to be gracious. There's the annoying noise that's been happening in the classroom. Back in the back of the room, my computer cart is unlocked. So grab a Chromebook out of there if you don't have your own device. You are going to log into Canvas, and in Canvas, you can either access it through the course or you can access it on the calendar for today's date. Go to Thursday, the 21st. Okay, click on it and there's a Canvas quiz. Inside that Canvas quiz, there are some problems with factoring by grouping that are multiple choice. Okay, I want you to go through. You can work with a partner, okay, as long as the volume is reasonable. If the sub says that we're not handling it appropriately and that you need to go back to your seat, you need to do that. Okay, I have the quiz set up so you can take it as many times as possible. I want you to take it until you have all of the answers correct and you have them all factored by grouping correctly. So if you want to work with a partner and sort of talk through that to make sure you're doing them okay, that's fine, but everybody individually needs to be submitting the Canvas quiz. That's going to be your participation points for today. Okay, once you're done with that, then your homework assignment, which is also on Canvas, okay, it's page 531, numbers 9, 12, 13, and 14. Ignore what the directions say. Just factor by grouping. Okay, you can either use your computer to pull up that page or you can use the textbook in the back of the room. I don't care. You're gonna complete those 4 problems and have those finished for homework tomorrow. Okay, if you have time in class to work on them, you can finish them up. If you don't have time, you need to be completing those for homework. Okay, so the Canvas quiz, making sure you have all those right, and then the 4 problems from page 531 to turn in for your homework tomorrow. If you do have any questions or you need to see this again, this video is also posted on Canvas, so feel free to rewatch it if you need any help there.